Hello everybody and welcome to this bonus episode of Books Up Close. So in addition to the regular reviews that I bring you, I also wanted to record some bonus episodes where I just tell you some of the other stuff that I've been consuming during these months. So this is the June-July episode. So I'm going to split this up into TV, music, podcasts and some other books that I've been consuming that I'm not getting around to review because there's not enough time in the day. So firstly, in terms of television, obviously the first thing that I've been watching and that everyone else has been watching, although if you haven't, you should be, is Michaela Coel's I May Destroy You, which is probably one of the best things I've seen on TV in a long, long time. It is dark, it is challenging, it is also funny, it is formally inventive. Each episode just leaves you kind of breathless at the end that you need to see the next one. It's a difficult watch in some ways, but it's definitely worth it. And it thinks about gender and race and sexuality and trauma and identity and friendship and relationships and time and creativity and writing, all of the things you could ever want from a TV show. The other thing to watch on Netflix is Disclosure, which is a documentary about trans representation on TV and film. Some really amazing talking heads, lots of really good analysis of how representation has worked historically and why it matters and what we can do to change that. A really, really important film to watch. In terms of music, there's so many things I've been listening to, but a few things to point out are firstly the music of a guy that I recently discovered called Benedict Cork, who I love. His voice is amazing. He writes really beautiful pop songs, great piano playing. Definitely recommend that, and his latest song is called One Last Song. And I obviously have to mention the new album Gaslighter from The Chicks, formerly the Dixie Chicks. Obviously they changed their name recently. I'm not sure how I feel about The Chicks as a name, but regardless, it is a great album. It is country, it is pop, and it's fun, and it's angry, and it's definitely worth listening to. The title song, Gaslighter, is worth the entry price alone. In terms of podcasts that I've been listening to, there's a few that I would point out. One which came out earlier in the year, but is one that I've listened to and actually re-listened to bits of, is called Floodlines, which is from The Atlantic magazine, and it's all about Hurricane Katrina. Now, Katrina is something that I've kind of written about and explored and taught before, so it's something that I'm interested in. But this podcast did give a new lens through which to view that disaster in 2005 and the kind of aftermath that was made worse by terrible local and governmental neglect. It opens up lots of questions about race and place and poverty and state power and control, governmental neglect, and so on. It's a really worthwhile listen. I would also recommend the Red Nation podcast, which is a really brilliant show about Native American life in all of its kind of diversity. There are great episodes about particular books that they kind of do reviews and interviews about, but there are also kind of news stories that are worth listening to as well. So it's a really great place to go to find out more about Indigenous worlds, especially in the US. And of course, I have to mention the wonderful Where Should We Begin, which is a psychoanalysis podcast by Esther Perel, who is a Belgian psychotherapist who has a practice in New York. And the show, I think this is its third or fourth season, I forget, is a really great way to think about what therapy is. So you basically listen into a one-off therapy session between Perel and usually a couple. While these aren't ongoing clients of Perel's, you still get a sense of her helping this couple through a particular issue or a particular question. It is really fantastic. And obviously the names are changed, but you really get an insight into people's lives. And finally, just to recommend some other books that I haven't got around to reviewing yet. Maybe I will do as time goes on, but for now I just want to sell them here to you. 2 books of poetry. So the first one is Natalie Diaz's Post-Colonial Love Poem, which has just been published by Faber. It's fantastic. I've loved Diaz's poems for a while, but this is a really, really nice book. Some really beautiful lyrics, some kind of formal experimentation. Definitely worth checking out. Also, to flag up the book Tongues of Fire by Sean Hewitt, which came out with Cape earlier in the year. Some really beautiful poems about the natural world, about grief, about sex, about bodies, just really kind of tender poems that I think you will immediately like and get into. And then the third book is Niven Govindan's This Brutal House, which came out in paperback this year with dialogue books. and is a really great look at the ball scene in New York in the 80s. And it kind of moves between a few different perspectives and viewpoints. So you get this wee voice of these mothers of the houses who are kind of demanding justice for missing children, and they're kind of standing on City Hall steps talking in that wee voice, which is really interesting. And then you get that intercut with other members of the houses. There are also some really interesting scenes where you get the balls themselves represented. So you get the Vogue caller calling out all of these categories, which on paper is really interesting to read, especially if you watch something like Pose, or if you've seen Paris is Burning, or even RuPaul's Drag Race. You've seen kind of versions of how this culture plays out, but on the page it's really kind of transformed through language in interesting ways. So I would suggest you check that out too. So until next time, when I bring you a brand new review, the next book up will be Layla Slimani's Sex and Lies, and after that, Percival Everett's Telephone. Let me know what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're consuming, what's getting you through lockdown or post-lockdown or whatever state we're in now, I don't know, and comment below your thoughts. So please like and subscribe as ever, ring the bell for notifications, and share with me what you're reading and what you're doing. I hope you're all well, keep safe and healthy, and see you soon.